Hey, this is Tom here, Zero Pass, Nubatama Third Eye Facebook page, coming at you with a, excuse me. So, before I say anything, I got a little bit of a cold, so you might hear me clear my throat a couple times here, or cough. But I got a deck I want to bring to you. I've been thinking about, it's a Nubatama deck. I've been thinking about cards that really aren't being showcased much. Some of the pieces are. Jami Congo, of course, Storm, those are cards that we've been using, we like. But there's a few other cards in here that I really haven't been seeing much of in terms of other YouTubers showcasing. And, you know, regardless of that, I'm just thinking about a new strategy for our deck. So probably going to usually use Protect 2, and you'll see the deck here in a minute, but you know, make sure to run Protect 1 markers in case you decide to go that way. Of course, no choice of starters, right? I'm going to go in reverse here. So running Jami Congo. Jami Congo really, to be honest, this card, and why do I have 5 Jami Congos in the deck? So we got 4 Jami Congo. Is that all we got in the deck? Yeah, that's all we got. Just they look really similar. So Jami Congo, at least for me, has pretty much replaced Kujikira Congo in terms of its utility. So as was pointed out by another player a while back, sorry I don't remember the name, but this card's basically going to neg your opponent probably 1 card, even if you write it first. So they're probably going to be greater than 6. And so you're going to actually pull a card out of their hand without any counterblast, without anything, just by writing this thing. So you probably want to write it second. It just kind of depends on what you get. You just kind of run and roll with what you get. So your other, well, I should say my other grade 3 boss that I'm shooting for is Storm. If I write Storm, I still get his awesome ability to negate attacks on the Vanguard on him. Just popping 2 of my rear guards and counterblast 1. So, you know, either one, just kind of depends on what you get in your hand, and you roll with it. I am running 2 Voidmaster. Voidmaster is going to help Storm plays. The Voidmaster is also going to help in the theory behind this deck, which is traps or switch and bait. And traps, I don't mean traps, maybe I do mean traps like Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh! So I'm not really sure if it's going to mean that, but this is definitely a ninja trap deck where the idea is to trap your opponent into making choices, not necessarily choices where your card says your opponent chooses, but actually choices in terms of guarding based on what you have in play. And so we're about to get to those pieces here in a second. Best utility card in the deck, always Gale. Gale's definitely going to help Storm plays. Gale's going to help you pop cards back up into hand that you may want to trap your opponent with. I'll give you another utility card here that I really love. It's become very dear to my heart, which is Tsunomasa. Tsunomasa is definitely going to help you to Soul Charge, to help fuel the trap cards, as you'll see, as well as potentially get grade 3s in earlier for these 2 guys to be able to use use his restriction of 4 cards to your opponent's hand, as well as Storm's ability to allow you to develop more attacks, as you see the need for. And we're almost there. We're almost to the cards that I want to showcase here. We do have Counterblast in the deck. It's right here. And so we definitely, Sakura Fubuki is still going to help fuel these guys. I'm fine with 3. Grade 2, if you got him with him, it's really great. If you're at 1 damage, use it, you know, Counterblast, use him, then drop this, Countercharge. It's a really nice combo. So now for the trap cards. Grade 2 trap card, Tengu. So Tengu is an interesting card. So Tengu on placement, Soul Blast 1, your opponent chooses a trigger unit, including a draw PG. From hand, and they discard it. And if they don't, you get to draw a card. So this is part of your card draw engine. You're depending on your opponent, but the card that you're probably going to put into play first is going to be Suma Jibashio. So Suma Jibashio is an act once per turn, which is awesome. He's not on placement. So last one, your opponent chooses a card and they discard it. They draw a card back to their hand. They show it to you, which is nice because it's revealing to you what you need to work with. For every grade value of the card that they chucked to their discard, this gets plus 10k. So you drop this, so like, okay, well I discard a crit, and then you drop this. So it forces guard out of hand. So playing this card first, your opponent just may make the decision of dropping a trigger so that he gets 0. But then you drop this, and now if they have 2 triggers in hand, they got rid of one of them, they now have to decide whether or not they're going to get rid of so much guard. Because the triggers in the game now are really valuable in terms of guarding. And one of the things we have a hard time with is pressuring really hard directly. So this is an indirect way to pressure hard. And following that up with either minimizing the hand or multiple attacks with an amazing guard effect. The hope is that, you know, in theory crafting this deck, that would be what this deck's able to do and keep up with the decks that typically just put direct pressure on you. You know, Nova Grapplers, it's direct pressure. Bermuda Triangle, it's direct pressure. Even though we've kind of lost our grade 2 rush, if you will, in that deck, September 20th for English. Still, when you get to grade 3, I mean, it's still a hard pressure. Force 2, melody all over the place. So yeah. So the idea with this deck is you actually would rush. You know, you're going to give hopefully grade 1 and grade 2 game pressure, and so that gets us to Arakuru Gitsune. Arakuru Gitsune is, I don't want to say it's a laughing stock at this last set for us, but I mean, come on, 3k, really? But it has 2 critical. And this card actually is somewhat of a good first ride because your opponent is put in a situation where they're going to overguard, or they're going to say, well, if you don't boost this guy, they're going to say, well, I just going to, you know, 1 to pass it. Well, the build I have here is running 8 crits. And in fact, I might be running more crits if we had them because of this guy. So Protect 2 is going to get him up to an 8k. If you ride him first as your grade 1, you put this behind your opponent, or behind him to boost. If they discard a trigger, then that may be the trigger you know, if it's a trigger they needed, they're not going to discard it. You gotta assume your opponent's smart, right? So if they think they need it, and you're going to be attacking for 11, if they've got a 12k beater, they may just say, well, 1 to pass. 12k beaters is kind of, you know, it's a thing that we play in OTT. It's a thing that even this deck, we now have a 12k beater. You see he's not in here because really, honestly, the utility of that card is not needed in this deck. I'm trying to rush you in the grade 1 and grade 2 game. I've got pieces to do that. I don't really need the 12k vanilla in here. And it doesn't have a spot. There's no room for it. You can potentially take this out, but you need these pieces. These are both Soul Blast. So you kind of need this guy, okay? At least in theory, from what I'm envisioning for the deck. So, and this Soul Blast, you know, you get a Soul Blast here as well. So, but the idea is you ride him. If you don't boost him, opponent doesn't guard. You check a crit. It's 3 damage. I mean, it's just 3 damage right off the bat. They're not even a grade 3 yet. That's an amazing place for you to have your opponent at. Again, if you boost with him, which is really the only card I would boost. I wouldn't use this to boost this on your grade 1 ride. If you have this in hand, you can think about boosting it. If you don't have this in hand, just swing with this. See what happens. Yeah. Later game, this card becomes kind of, I wouldn't say totally useless, but situational. So if you have Protect 2 online, and you know this would be an 8K just by playing it, but if you're playing this off of Storm's ability, he's now 13K. Okay, because he's going to get the 5 from this being on the rear guard, and then from that, if you're using that ability, if he's one of those 3 cards you're going to place, it's plus 5. That's 13K plus, or 13K with 2 crit. It's not bad. And if you've set up with a boost behind it, then it's even more. So, in my opinion, excuse me, in my opinion, this card, it has its place. I think this is one of those places where you're trapping your opponent into the guard game. How are they going to guard? And one of the things that you know I've talked a lot about is typically running more draw, because you know our hand gets real small real fast. Well, in this deck, if you're forcing grade 1 and grade 2, it's not as much of a problem. You're going to get draw from this, and then later on down the road, depending on where your opponent's at, you may be getting draw from this. Soul Blast 1 draw card. That's pretty good. So we have a definite draw engine, and then this is situational. But again, in that pressuring game of trapping your opponent, you know, it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. So I've got 4 heal, 4 draw PG, and then let me get the rest of this here. 8 critical. Okay. Let me know what you guys think. If you don't like the video, please tell me why. I'd really appreciate it. Again, this is a theory crafting video, showcasing cards that I haven't been seeing on lists, and showcasing an idea, a ninja tactic really, of using lower numbers with interesting effects such as this guy, of course, who is made it into decks that other YouTubers are showing their decks, which seem to be working pretty okay. We're seeing them on Freedom Duo as well. This guy's definitely being thrown in there, 2 of, 3 of, maybe 4 of. But these 2 cards, no, not really. And there's actually good reason for that. It depends on what you're trying to do, and it depends on the deck. So again, in this kind of deck, you're trying to rush your opponent down with a lot of critical, and you're trying to trick and trap your opponent into the decisions they make with guarding. So anyhow, I hope you guys are having a good weekend. I plan to playtest this. I might get absolutely and utterly destroyed playtesting this, but I do want to playtest it out and see how it works against a variety of decks. And we'll see how I do. Take care.